The most terrifying army in the world was riding west. City after city had fallen. Kingdoms had collapsed. Armies had been crushed before they even understood what they were facing. From the steppes of Asia, an unstoppable storm had begun to sweep across the world, and now it was heading for Europe. In the spring of 1241, the fate of the continent hung by a thread. The Mongols had already destroyed Poland. Hungary was next, and nothing seemed capable of stopping them. But just as Europe braced for total annihilation, the Mongols suddenly turned back. Not defeated, not destroyed. They simply left. And, to this day, historians still ask the same haunting question. What if they hadn't? To understand how close Europe came to falling, we need to begin far away, on the vast grasslands of Central Asia. This was the world of the steppe, a land without walls, without borders, without cities. Only endless plains and the people who mastered them. Among these people was a boy named Genghis Khan. Born as Temujin around 1162, he grew up in a brutal world of tribal warfare, betrayal, and survival. His father was poisoned by rivals. His family was abandoned by their clan. As a child, Temujin nearly starved, but hardship forged something extraordinary. By adulthood, he had united the fractured tribes of the Mongolian steppe under a single banner. And in 1206, Temujin took a new title, Genghis Khan, the ruler of all Mongols. What followed would become the largest land empire in human history. The Mongols fought differently from anyone the settled civilizations of Eurasia had ever seen. Their armies moved with terrifying speed. Every warrior rode several horses, allowing them to travel extraordinary distances. Their composite bows could kill from ranges European knights could barely imagine. But their greatest weapon was coordination. Using signals, messengers, and carefully planned strategies, Mongol commanders could maneuver tens of thousands of riders across enormous battlefields with surgical precision. And above all, they used fear. Cities that resisted were destroyed completely. Those that surrendered were spared. Word spread quickly. Resistance meant annihilation. Submission meant survival. Most chose submission. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols smashed the powerful Khwarezmian Empire, conquered northern China, and reached as far as the edges of Eastern Europe. But Genghis Khan died in 1227 before the Mongol Empire reached its greatest expansion. His successors would continue the conquest, and among them were two commanders who would bring the Mongols to the very doorstep of Europe: Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, and the brilliant general Subutai. Subutai was perhaps the greatest strategist of the medieval world. Over his lifetime, he commanded more than 20 campaigns and fought across thousands of miles of terrain. Mountains, deserts, frozen rivers, none of it stopped him. By the late 1230s, Subutai and Batu Khan were preparing their most ambitious invasion yet, Europe. The campaign began with ruthless efficiency. In 1237, Mongol armies swept into the lands of the Kievan Rus. City after city fell. Ryazan was burned. Vladimir destroyed. Then came Kiev. Once one of the greatest cities of Eastern Europe, Kiev resisted. It didn't matter. After a brutal siege in 1240, Mongol forces stormed the city. Chroniclers later wrote that the streets were filled with the dead, and the once great city was reduced to ruins. The road into Europe was now open. But the Mongols didn't simply charge west blindly. This was a carefully designed invasion. Subutai planned a multi-pronged attack across the continent. One army would move into Poland. Another would strike Hungary. The goal was simple: prevent European armies from uniting, defeat them separately, destroy them completely. In April 1241, Europe got its first real taste of Mongol warfare. Near the town of Legnica, a coalition of European forces gathered to stop the Mongol advance. Knights from across Poland, German crusaders, and troops led by Henry II the Pious. They believed they were facing raiders. They had no idea what they were up against. The battle began with a familiar Mongol tactic, a feigned retreat. Mongol riders charged forward, then suddenly withdrew. European knights pursued, and that's when the trap snapped shut. Hidden Mongol units attacked from the sides. Smoke bombs filled the air, confusing the defenders. Then came the arrows, wave after wave of them. Within hours, the European army was shattered. Henry II, the Pious, was killed. His head was reportedly carried on a spear. The Battle of Legnica was over, and the Mongols were still advancing. At nearly the same moment, the main Mongol army struck Hungary. Here the kingdom's ruler, Bela IV of Hungary, had gathered a large army to resist the invasion. Their forces met near the Saho River, close to the village of Mohi. What followed became one of the most devastating battles in European history, the Battle of Mohi. During the night, Mongol forces crossed the river using hidden bridges and engineering tactics that stunned their opponents. At dawn, the Hungarian army found itself surrounded. Arrows rained down. Catapults hurled explosives and flaming projectiles. European knights attempted desperate charges, but they were cut apart by mobile Mongol horse archers. By the end of the battle, the Hungarian army had been annihilated. King Bela IV barely escaped with his life. Hungary lay open to conquest. The Mongols now controlled much of Eastern Europe. Poland was devastated. Hungary was collapsing. Cities burned, villages emptied. Refugees fled west in terror, carrying stories of an unstoppable enemy. In Western Europe, panic spread. Kings and nobles prepared for the worst. The Mongols had already defeated every army that stood against them, and there was no reason to believe Europe would be any different. Some chroniclers believed the end of Christendom had arrived. Throughout 1241 and into 1242, Mongol forces ravaged Hungary. They crossed frozen rivers in winter, capturing fortress after fortress. Entire regions were depopulated. It seemed inevitable. Soon, the Mongols would push deeper into Europe, into Austria, into Germany, perhaps even into France. The road was open. And then, something strange happened. The invasion stopped. In December 1241, news arrived from the heart of the Mongol Empire. The Great Khan, the supreme ruler of the Mongols, had died. That ruler was Ögedei Khan, son of Genghis Khan. According to Mongol tradition, princes of the royal family were expected to return east to participate in the election of a new Great Khan. For Batu Khan, this created a dilemma: or return home to influence the future of the empire. In early 1242, Batu made his decision. The Mongol armies withdrew, slowly at first, then completely. The greatest invasion Europe had ever faced simply ended. Why did they really leave? Historians still debate the answer. The death of Ögedei Khan was certainly a major factor. But there may have been other reasons. Europe's terrain was less suitable for the massive Mongol cavalry armies. Forests, rivers, and castles slowed their mobility. Supply lines were stretched across thousands of miles. and Europe's political fragmentation made total conquest more complicated than expected. Even so, the Mongols had proven something terrifying. Europe was vulnerable. In the years that followed, the Mongols would continue to rule vast territories across Eurasia. Batu Khan established the Golden Horde, dominating the lands of Russia for centuries. But Western Europe was spared further invasion, not by victory, but by circumstance. Historians often ask the same question: what if the Mongols had continued? At the time, no European power possessed an army capable of defeating them in open battle. The Holy Roman Empire was divided. France was still consolidating power. England was preoccupied with its own struggles. If the Mongols had pushed west with the same intensity they showed in Asia, the political map of Europe might look very different today. Languages, religions, empires, all of them could have changed. Instead, Europe was given something rare in history: a second chance. Over time, European kingdoms learned from the Mongol threat. They strengthened fortifications, improved military organization, and began to understand the importance of coordinated defense. The Mongol invasion left scars across Eastern Europe, but it also served as a warning, one that Europe would remember. The Mongol Empire eventually fractured into separate khanates. Its unstoppable expansion slowed, and centuries later, new powers would rise in Europe. But for a brief moment, in the 13th century, the fate of an entire continent hung in the balance. An empire born on the windswept steppes had come within reach of conquering Europe. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. History often turns on battles, sometimes on leaders. But every once in a while, the course of the world changes because of something far more fragile: timing. If the news of a distant death had arrived a little later, if a single decision had been different, Europe's story might have taken a completely different path. And the world we know today might not exist. If you enjoy stories like this, the forgotten turning points and hidden moments that shaped our world, subscribe for more journeys into history. Because sometimes the most important events in history are the ones that almost happened.